Open Minds Radio. And our host, I guess, our little intro guy, Bob Dean, we usually have, is taking a break or something. He forgot to say, welcome. Actually, we don't have him live in the studio. Some of you know he's getting older. He can't come out here and do live in the studio intros for us. It's usually recorded, but somehow our audio went a little haywire, but that's okay. Because I can tell you who we are. We're Open Minds Radio, your UFO news authority, and I am your host, Alejandro Rojas. We talk about UFO news, and we got lots of good news today, I got to tell you. And we have a magnificent guest as well, Lester Velez, a great guy, a friend of mine, someone who is part of MUFON, and he also is part of the Abduction Experiencer Research Committee for MUFON. And of course, some people, like to say, oh, MUFON doesn't pay attention to abductees and abductions, but they do. And, in fact, if you feel that you are having these sorts of experiences, MUFON's one of the best places to go because they're going to be able to refer you to people that can help you. Now, this group is more along the lines of, like it says, research. So they've gathered a bunch of information, a bunch of data, very interesting stuff. And Les is going to be here today to tell us about this. And, in fact, one of the studies that they did, a psychological study, is in our magazine, so you can check that out. And it was pretty much the person who ran the study or who took charge was Dr. Robert Lelever. And I know I can't say his name correctly, and I apologize for that. But unfortunately, Robert has passed away, and he was a wonderful person. And we'll talk some more about him. In fact, you can read more about him on our website. And like I said, we have their study in our magazine. So I'm really excited to have Lester on. He's also the assistant director for Northern California. California is so huge, and I know some of our listeners are California UFOers and California MUFON and welcome. And California is so large that it's broken up into many different segments, each of which has a chapter that is as large as many of the other states have. So it's very impressive. I'm always very impressed when I get to go out there and meet with these guys. And there's a lot of fun people out there. Maureen and I have talked about, I've told you about, Maureen doesn't get on the show to tell you much about it, but how we've been out to some of the conferences out there to sell magazines and to talk to people, and it's been a lot of fun. So we love California, and we've got a cool Californian on the show. One other thing he's going to talk about is OPUS, and that is a group that he is vice president of, and that's the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. And we'll talk to him more about that as well. So that's really exciting. We are very close to having our crop circle issue of our magazine finished, but you're going to have to still wait a little while till like the end of January, a month, to see it. But I'm just really excited about that, and I wanted to tell you about that. We also have a lot about Rockefeller in there, and we're always working on the magazines that we have a couple months ahead, and that's a lot of fun. But you can go out there right now and get a magazine that we have a story about alien typology. In other words, the different types of creatures that people are saying that they see. And, we had some criticism that we stick kind of to history and nuts and bolts, and we kind of shocked them, I think, with our abduction one, and let alone this story. In fact, one guy was very excited on the web we saw today. Open Minds is talking about reptilians, man. They're cool. This is great. So we're very happy that he was excited about that. Some cool YouTube stuff that we've put up lately. I'll talk some more about it in a little bit here, and Jason is going to be on to talk a little bit about it towards the end of the news. I think he's got a story about some of the YouTube excitement we got going on here. So we'll talk about that after the news. But, of course, the film festival. I think some of you have listened to me and submitted some of your documentaries to the film festival that we have coming up in February as part of the UFO Congress, and I'm very excited about that. It looks like we're going to have some good films to check out there. And to clarify, because I have had this question actually a few times this week, the way it's going to work this year is February 22nd, the day before the Congress. We're going to show all of the potential nominees for the categories that can win. And the categories are long form, short form, and people's choice, essentially. We'll have the judges there. We'll judge the movies. And then at the Congress itself, so don't worry, you're going to get to watch movies at the Congress. You're going to be able to see the best of the best. We're going to show you just the top 3 nominees for each of the categories at the Congress in the evening as usual. So if you're worried, because some people have asked, am I going to get to see any movies? Yes, you are going to see the movies. In fact, you're going to see the cream of the crop, because some people don't like to watch all of the movies, and you won't have to. However, some people like to watch all of the movies. If you do, like a lady I talked to today, then come out on the 22nd. It's free of charge. It's at the same location at the Radisson Fort McDowell. Hang out with us and watch all of the movies. And prerequisite to be a judge, show up at 10 a.m. when we start showing the movies and stay the entire time to watch them all. And hey, you can be a judge yourself. So come on by. It's going to be a lot of fun. Of course, you can see more about this at ufocongress.com, at our magazine Open Minds, which is on the racks in Barnes & Noble and Borders and the grocery stores. Or you can go to our website, openminds.tv. And I like to say that because we're getting a lot of new listeners on a weekly basis, and I'm really excited about that. And welcome all of you, and welcome all of you regulars around the world. Also on our website, daily UFO headlines. UFOs in the news. Not only are we covering that, we are making news. And to tell us more about the daily UFO news, we have our news correspondent, Jason McClelland.
Hello, Alejandro, and greetings, everyone. This is your Open Minds News Brief for Monday, December 13th, 2010. Lots of rumors have been flying around about the U.S. Air Force's X-37B space plane. Now, this is the robotic, completely unmanned craft that has been in orbit for 224 days and returned to Earth earlier this month. Rumors surround this ship because little is known about the classified 7-month mission from which it just returned, other than basic mission objectives released by officials, such as test of guidance systems, navigation control, thermal protection, and autonomous operation in orbit, reentry, and landing. But last week, Richard McKinney, Deputy Undersecretary of the Air Force for Space Programs, said, I applaud the ingenuity and innovation of some reports, but really it's as described. This is a test vehicle, pure and simple. But testing for what? That is the question that has many theorizing. The X-37B did carry something in its payload bay during its flight, something secret. And that's all that's known about it. They had something secret, and they have no interest. They don't have any intention of letting people know.
I loved the Wired article because the title was nothing to see here, move along. And they talked about how the Air Force said it was nothing, it was just a test, but they alluded to a secret payload. And so even the writer's like, well, then it was more than a test if it had a secret payload.
Right.
And he was kind of laughing about it, but not necessarily frustrated. But that they just kind of are just so over-secretive about everything. So why couldn't they say there was a secret project, we launched this secret satellite?
They seem to like drawing attention to how secret it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's fascinating some of the theories that people have come up with for what the purpose of this craft is.
Oh, I haven't seen those.
A prototype bomber, some sort of space bomber plane, and this is the greatest one, a satellite scoop.
Just pick up like
to go and steal people's satellites.
Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah, and I also thought it was interesting to bring up that when I heard about this plane and we heard and watched video of this robotic plane landing all by itself with no people, thought that was pretty cool. But I was surprised to know that that's not the first time it's happened. mean, the Soviets did this back in 1988.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they had a Buran spacecraft, part of their Buran program back in 1988 that looked just like a space shuttle, launched into space, orbited, came back, and landed.
What I think is interesting, too, is, as we all know, if this has come into the white world, or at least it's a secret but acknowledged program, the unacknowledged programs, like Michael Schratt writes about on our magazine and on the web, are much more advanced. So what is the Air Force really doing? I mean, in their symbols, and I've done talks on this, it alludes to them having space planes or spaceships. And it seems like they really do. I mean, that there's a lot more to Air Force Space Command than just babysitting satellites. Something much more exciting.
Well, they've told you already, Alejandro, what they're doing. They're doing basic things,
Just basic
but it's
testing.
secret.
Yeah. It's all secret. That's the problem.
Britain's Ministry of Defense has angered a lot of residents near Warminster, England, after access was restricted at Cradle Hill, an area popular with dog walkers, horse riders, and UFO spotters. Civilian vehicles are now prohibited from the area, and a Ministry of Defense estate spokesperson said, "We have received a number of complaints about dog walkers failing to control dogs in the area. These include very significant dog fouling, abuse of troops, attacks on sheep, deer, and horse riders." I wonder what dog fouling is.
Yeah, that's it's one of those British terms, which is probably something simple, but we just don't know it here in the States.
I have rotten dogs. They do a lot of dog fouling in the house.
Yeah.
Abuse of troops. I wonder what troops they would be referring to.
It makes it seem like maybe the dogs are harassing some British troops that are doing exercises out there.
That's what it sounds like to me, but it's kind of odd that they would word it like that.
Yeah.
The area apparently became famous in the 1960s and 70s for UFOs, crop circles, which explains why UFO spotters are upset about the new restrictions. The MOD points out, though, that pedestrians can still access the area just without their vehicles.
Mm-hmm.
That seems reasonable, but then again, think about a lot of our UFO researchers here who are getting on in years and need the wheelchairs to get up the hill.
But at least, I mean, it seems like UFO. I think that it's interesting there are UFOs in the area and people do some UFO watching out there, but it doesn't seem to be some project to shut down people looking at UFOs in the area. I don't think
it doesn't seem like that. When the story first came out, that's sort of the spin it was taking, and people were letting their conspiracies fly. But the fact that they're still letting people go there, they're not restricting their access.
They're just not letting their dogs foul.
That's
the
right.
Area.
Yep. During a weekend of searching for gold, an Australian prospector found something unexpected: a UFO. Adam Kainero's latest gold hunt in the southern tablelands near Braidwood was unsuccessful, but he did not return home empty-handed. He and a friend had just descended from a steep mountain on their way home when Kainero stopped to take a picture of this mountain. He claims he could not really see because the sun was in his eyes, so he just kind of pointed and shot. When he returned home, he looked at the picture only to find an oddly shaped black object hovering above the mountain. He told the Daily Telegraph, "We always see really weird things when we go out places where there is no one around."
Yeah.
It's kind of an odd picture. To me, it doesn't seem to be anything more than perhaps the top of a mountain behind the mountain he was photographing, with the clouds kind of in the background there.
How do you know the tip of the mountain didn't break off because it's a large space?
That's certainly always a possibility, but looking at that picture, if that was a ship, it's sort of an oddly shaped, kind of broken bottom ship.
And it does look exactly like the mountaintop, so yeah, it could be clouds.
The
in front of
texture and the color looks
Yeah.
exactly like the mountain in the foreground. So,
Yeah.
but who knows?
They were in camouflage. They were trying to sneak off when they snapped the picture.
If they're smart, that's what they do.
Yep.
After encountering delays, SpaceX was finally able to launch their Dragon space capsule. The SpaceX Dragon was launched from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida on Wednesday morning. SpaceX said the Dragon capsule separated about 10 minutes after launch. The Dragon also successfully returned from its 2-orbit trial run around the Earth on Wednesday afternoon when it splashed down 500 miles off the coast of Southern California, making it the first commercial spacecraft to return from a low Earth orbit.
That's exciting. I mean, we always hear about Branson and Virgin, and their struggles to get something rolling and to get into space, and they put something up there for a few seconds. This thing is already orbited. It went around. It's large enough, and it's capable of holding up to 7 astronauts to take them to the shuttle, let alone all the supplies that could take. So, I mean, this thing's almost ready to roll.
Yep, they've got agreements in place with NASA, and that's what they're scheduled to do, to take crew and supplies to the International Space Station.
They're ready to take up Bigelow's hotels in space.
Right.
Pretty exciting.
And it's interesting to point out that just like the Air Force's X-37B, this craft, the SpaceX Dragon, had a secret payload.
Oh, it did. Oh, that's right.
It did. And people knew about this, but the CEO of the company wasn't saying what that secret payload was.
But unlike the Air Force, they've told us.
They did. After the mission was complete, they revealed that they took a wheel of cheese into space, which was a
space cheese.
Space cheese.
To make a second moon.
I don't think that was their intention.
Oh.
They just wanted to pay a little tribute to a Monty Python skit.
Yeah, the cheese skit, which some people thought they were going to take Spam, which would have made more sense because they referred to astronauts and NASA as Spam in a can.
That would have made sense if instead of SpaceX, it was Carnival Cruise Lines.
Well, and that brings me back to your robotic thing, the Spam in the can, because the reason the astronauts called themselves that, because NASA didn't want them to actually do anything but sit there. And then they had to fight NASA scientists to get the ability to actually pilot the spacecraft, and it saved their lives many times that they've been able to actually pilot and move stuff instead of just sitting there. Weird, huh?
If I were in space, I would probably be too busy looking out the window.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to fly.
Yeah, I'd want to turn right or left or something at least.
The Geminid meteor shower has been called the best sky show of the year, and it takes place this week. In fact, some of you could be seeing it right now. The Geminid meteor shower is different from other showers, though. Most meteor showers come from comets that spew meteoroids. The Geminids are different in that their source isn't a comet, but a strange rocky object that sheds very little debris, like dust, but it's not enough to explain the Geminids. A NASA meteor expert recently told MSNBC, "The Geminids are my favorite because they defy explanation." Astronomers still don't know where all the material for the Geminid meteor shower comes from.
See, that's a statement that I love, the sentence you just said there. Astronomers still don't know because they like to act like they know everything when there is so much they don't know. And I love these stories that come out on a regular basis where it's like astronomers baffled. Astronomers were wrong about this. They were wrong about that. This is new and something different, and they never thought this could happen. It happens all the time, but they act like they know everything when it comes to anomalous type of things.
Right, and isn't this pretty incredible? We've got this strange big thing that flies by, and they know it's going to fly by, and they know that it shoots all these weird things across the sky, but they don't know what it is.
Yeah, we don't know what the heck that is. It's who knows? I mean, if you wanted to really go out there and really open your mind, you could say, well, maybe these are little probes, little testing things that aliens are using to test our atmosphere, or who knows?
But, yeah, we don't know what they are, but look up. They look pretty.
Yeah, they're cool.
Alejandro, this was a really cool story from last week. There seems to be a lot of fireball UFO sightings lately. In the past month alone, there have been sightings in Florida, Georgia, and now California. Last week, a witness named Jeremy Corbell sent us a video he recorded of 2 strange fireballs in the sky above Santa Monica, California. In this video, the two balls in the sky, these illuminated balls are there sort of falling, but the upper object maneuvers. It veers to the left and then veers back to the right in these sharp movements. Really interesting behavior from this stuff. Just like it's surfing. And he colorfully referred to it as a Silver Surfer UFO.
Yeah.
And I also thought that was perfect being in Santa Monica, California.
Uh-huh.
So you've got this surfing UFO, and we were able to determine that there were many, many, many witnesses to these objects. It appeared on December 1st, and then again on December 8th, 1 week later. And many people captured video of the object from different locations around Santa Barbara. And we just found out that the San Antonio Spurs one of their star basketball players, Manu Ginobili, saw the same things in the sky when he was getting ready to get on his bus when the Clippers were in town, or the Spurs were in town to play the Los Angeles Clippers. And there's a video right now on the celebrity website TMZ showing Ginobili pointing at it. And apparently he posted on his Facebook and started looking around to try to find an explanation for these mysterious objects.
And you're the national UFO researcher authority on this sighting, because you even got on NBC News last week.
NBC, I believe Channel 4 in Los Angeles did contact us about a story we did on the Silver Surfer UFO and ran it on their news last week. So it's pretty exciting stuff, and we'll see if the objects return. But, you know, a lot of people saw these things. There's a lot of video out there from different locations, which is always a great thing with sightings, to have video from different vantage points.
Mm-hmm. And it's very strange stuff. And I think this whole, just to show how ridiculous, because if people haven't seen this, and hopefully we'll have the video that LA showed up on the website soon.
Absolutely.
But that Bill Nye said they were sea monkeys.
Bill Nye the Science Guy tried to debunk the video by saying sea monkeys. Right. And really, every single one of these videos is sea monkeys. I mean, give me a break. You have different witnesses, different vantage points at different times, even some at the same time. It's ridiculous.
Sea monkeys, that's a new one.
Good old Bill Nye and science plugging away.
Yeah. I mean, people can't take him serious. I mean, you would think that people would see that sea monkeys and kind of brush it off and think this guy's ridiculous.
Yeah, for sure. Well, many thanks to Jeremy for sending in that video of the Silver Surfer UFO. It was a fantastic video. Good job, Jeremy. That is it for the news. Remember to check out these stories and more at openminds.tv, your source for UFO-related news. I'm Jason McClellan, your Open Minds correspondent, and you've been briefed. Back to you, Alejandro.
It's funny, all the replies that we've gotten. Obviously, you all are very perplexed by what Bill Nye said as well. Gotten a lot of comments on that, and it's just mind-boggling how he could have thought what he thought. Manu Manu, I was thinking too, you know, nobody's used the headline Manu Manu like the Nanu Nanu. I'm surprised nobody's used that joke, because he's had a lot of press, of course, on his sighting. Interesting stuff. Other stuff going on Open Minds is cool stories, such as today we just posted a story on New Jersey UFO photos taken during a 1952 wave. And this is a fairly popular story. In fact, we included one of these pictures in our magazine previously in the UFO photos gallery that we include on all of our magazines. And they're very interesting pictures taken by a gentleman by the name of George Stock in July of 1952, along with a friend or two. And these files that we've got, you know, are somewhat limited from the late, great Wendell Stevens. And so we have Wendell's report, which we put up in its entirety and, you know, in the way that he wrote it. And then all of the pictures, we're not sure what sequence the pictures were taken in. And there were other pictures included, but I couldn't include them because, I mean, I didn't know who was part of the story and not. And there was this older gentleman with his chihuahua, a really cute picture, just this happy old fellow with his very happy chihuahua hanging out together. And I didn't include that, but these other UFO photos are really cool. And one of the great things is even UFO researchers may know of this story and have seen a picture or two, but we've got all 5 of the pictures that these gentlemen took and a picture of George Stock himself. So that's really cool too. So really excited about that story. You're going to have to check that out. Of course, we've had stories like we talked about with NASA bacteria, and because, you know, the findings are being questioned around whether or not, you know, what their supposed recent discoveries were very important or not. And then the SpaceX secret payloads in space. So we've got stories particularly on those things. So a lot going on the website. You got to check it out. Some of the other stories that we've posted in the news, as far as news highlights today, have been a lot about Manu, because that's been a hot story. Also, some of the stuff around the the fireball UFO wave, and a little bit more about Gary McKinnon. And an interesting story came up today on Gary McKinnon that says that perhaps, and this is a gentleman, we've talked about him a lot, so you're probably familiar, who hacked into American government files in order to find information about UFOs. And this week is another important week for him because they keep reviewing his case and whether or not they want to extradite him to the United States. The United States feels like they deserve to have him extradited. UK citizens feel otherwise, and the British government is kind of in between, trying to deal with this, trying to appease their people, and right now kind of stalling and not extraditing him and sending him over here to the United States. So this week they're reviewing him again, and his mom this week said he might have been part of some large UFO cyber hacking organization. So that's kind of a new twist to things, and I don't know if that necessarily helps his case, if that's true or not, but that's also been in the news a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how all of that goes. Of course, you've probably seen all this stuff about WikiLeaks, and Jason and I had talked about that, and it seems like it really got blown a little bit out of proportion because Gary McKinnon seems to be the only topic relating to UFOs in those WikiLeaks, and that may be it. We really don't know if there's going to be much more than that. And so, interesting, some newspapers have gone on and said that there's going to be talk about extraterrestrials and things like this in the WikiLeaks, when actually, if you read the direct quote from Assange, the guy who is getting those files, he really kind of made fun of the whole subject and said, yeah, we get these crazies sending us stuff, including on UFOs. And then he kind of added at the end, some of the cables coming out will have references to UFOs. It could have been the Gary McKinnon thing because the WikiLeaks came out that Hillary was being told that when she talks to the Prime Minister, he may bring up Gary McKinnon and his UFO hacking. So that may be it. I'm not sure. But let us now move on to the most exciting part of the show, and that is to speak with our wonderful guest this evening, Lester Velez. Les, are you there?
Yes, sir. How are you, Alejandro?
Doing really good. Good to talk to you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yep. What are you, out in the garage or something? You kind of sound hollow.
Well, you know what? As I got you on the speaker, I'll take you off.
Okay. Thank you.
How's that, better?
Oh, yeah, that does sound much better.
All right.
Our guests will
Well,
appreciate
first of all,
that.
thank you very much for having me on your program.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to have you on, and it's kind of interesting that we're having you on now just because of what happened last week with unfortunate death of Dr. Robert. And I know I get his last name wrong. Maybe you can help me out with that.
Sure, Louver.
Louver.
Right, just like
Okay.
the louvered windows.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it just absolutely blew my mind. I can tell you a little bit about the story about how it all happened.
Yeah.
I don't know if your listeners probably don't know this. They had he and his wife had just sold their house in Roswell, and they were planning to move to Indiana. And so they had gotten everything packed up, and they started to drive out to Indiana. And he mentioned to his wife, Alima, that he wasn't feeling well. And so they decided to turn around, and, he went to the hospital. And they said, you've got a pulmonary embolism. And so they decided that they couldn't treat him there in Roswell, so they were going to rush him up to Albuquerque. And I guess they put him on a one of these choppers, medical choppers. And
Wow.
en route, I guess, to Albuquerque, he died.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, he hasn't been well as far as that's concerned. He's had these clots going on for quite a while, so it wasn't something that they weren't aware of. But he had like 13 different medications that he was taking to ameliorate that situation, and unfortunately, this I think probably with all the stuff that he was doing. It probably just was too much. And,
yeah, he kept busy, a very busy person. I mean, he could have retired, but he kept teaching, helping out with the abduction research.
He was just such a wonderful man. I mean, he was so intelligent. He was great sense of humor. I talked to his wife just on Saturday, and we had a wonderful conversation, and he's got quite an extensive library that she's asked about, what she can do with it. So I told her I would get back to her on it, and so maybe we can do something with that collection at some point. Maybe even donate it to Open Minds or something. I don't know if you guys have got a facility for that kind of thing.
We do actually, so that would be possible. So yeah, let us know on that. And I knew him actually fairly well because the last 3 years being involved with the Roswell Festival, and he was one of the hardest workers, one of the volunteers out there who would volunteer to help out with the conference, running all over town, doing what it had to take. In the morning, he's, sitting and watching the doors. In the evenings, he's taking tickets and money at some other place. And I always found him to be just a wonderful person. And then, I knew him first as a volunteer, and then I hear he's this professor of psychology and everything, and he's just wonderful.
Oh, and by the way, your write-up on him on your site was great. I appreciate you doing that. That was a nice write-up on him and everything. And,
yeah. Well, thank you. And I'm really happy and fortunate that I was able to take those pictures of him at the MUFON Symposium.
Very good pictures.
I'm glad I did that.
Yeah, me too. Matter of fact, I emailed Lima this afternoon and told her about your site so that she could go there and take a look at that.
Oh, great.
I think she'll really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, and let her know if she wants the full resolution of those pictures, she can have them. I was planning on, I knew we'd be working with him more in the future, or I suspected we would when I took those pictures, and it's unfortunate that I won't be able to.
And he was only 66 years old.
Yeah, and he had a lot of energy.
He did, and it's just unfortunate he had this issue, this medical issue that unfortunately took him way too soon. I mean, I enjoyed working with him on our project, the Omega-3 project. And matter of fact, we've got the Omega-4 project, all the information ready to roll out and start the next study, which we were planning to do beginning of January. But, I think I'm going to get slowed down a little bit here because the group that we have, there's only one other psychologist right now that's in it, and but Robert was just incredible. His energy and his willingness to work and put so much of this together. I was kind of the logistical guy on this and gathered up the abductees and the control group people, and of course he was the put the instruments together that we utilized to send out to these people, and then he employed I guess a person that he knows from college to do some statistical analysis on it and everything, and so so he was really truly the primary investigator on this thing, and then we had one other psychologist who's out in Georgia, Michael Freeman, who helped in doing a lot of the people that were like sort of west of the Mississippi or east of the Mississippi, and because he's out, as I said, he's out in Georgia. So,
yeah, let's get into the Omega Project and what that is, and maybe you can kind of explain that.
Sure. Well, maybe first, maybe before we go into that, just give the audience a little background on. I'll just give a sort of a.
No, I was going to do that later. You talk about Omega Project now. Just kidding. No, that's a good idea. I was thinking of doing that. I was going to start that at first, and we started talking about Robert.
Yeah.
But let's do that
We'll
so they
we'll
can
get
know
back into that.
who is this guy? Who is this
Yeah.
Les
Who
Velez?
is Lester Velez? It all started for me back in '91, or actually, I should say it's even earlier than that. It was when I was 11 years old, and I was living in Connecticut, and I saw this object over a tree line near my house, and it scared the hell out of me. And I ran in the house and told my dad about it, and by the time I was able to get him outside, it was gone. And so he said, well, it's probably just a beacon of light reflecting off a cloud or something, And at the time, I just didn't really believe that, and went to the library and started reading books about UFOs. And of course, back in those days, this is in the 50s, late 50s, that George Adamski was the hot topic, and so I started reading his books, and time passed and became an adolescent, and I guess ladies became a little bit more important in my life than UFOs, and I kind of forgot about it. It's like somebody threw a switch.
They distract us from the important stuff.
Exactly. And so, yeah, right. So anyway, then I moved out here to California in 1985, and I picked up the Mercury News one day, and lo and behold, Stanton Freeman is coming to town to talk about UFOs and the government cover-up, and he was going to talk at San Jose City College. And so I said, oh, I got to go see this,
Uh-huh.
And it was like somebody threw the switch again. Now I'm really excited. So
Right.
I figured, going there I'd see, a handful of people, but he packed the auditorium. There must have been like 300 people there.
People love to see Stanton.
Oh, and he gave this incredible presentation, as he usually does, and so I got all fired up, and MUFON had a table in the auditorium there that they were showing their journal and, signing up people if they wanted to, and so I decided, okay, I'm going to join MUFON. And so I did, and I was getting the journal, and, well, after a while, that wasn't enough for me, so I became an investigator. And most of the cases that I ended up getting started off as a sighting, but then invariably they all turned out to be abduction-type cases.
Interesting.
Where, the person saw something first, and then, they come to realize after a while that there was more to it than that. And then these people started asking me, do I know of other people that have had similar circumstances in their lives? And I said, yes, I do. So they said, well, I'd like to meet them. And so I said, all right. So the next thing I know, I'm facilitating a support group. So these people are coming together, and I quickly realized that I need a professional in the group, a mental health practitioner of some sort. So I ended up contacting June Steiner, who's now the president of the organization that I co-founded in 1994 called OPUS, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support, which the main mission is to help people having paranormal circumstances in their lives, which could include, and it seems to be the main focus of the group, is to help people who've had an abduction-type experience. So anyway, after a while, became an assistant state director here in Northern California, working with Ruben Uriarte, who you know very well.
Yep.
And so, as I said, in '94, I co-founded the group with Dr. Gene Lipson, and we're still going pretty strong. And about 3 years ago, MUFON has been basically a nuts and bolts type organization, as I like to say, that their main focus has been, looking at the UFO and pretty much nothing beyond that. Well, they started to get more and more people calling them, saying, hey, I believe I've been abducted. I need some kind of help. Can you help me? And so about 3 years ago, as I said, I contacted MUFON and offered the services of OPUS, because what we've been trying to do is to set up a referral network throughout the country of mental health practitioners, medical doctors, and hypnotherapists to help these people. And so MUFON decided, okay, yes, let's form an alliance. And so we've been working quite well together. The people that do call in now to MUFON headquarters, I usually get the phone calls, and then I try to help that person. I'll contact that person and find out what they're looking for. And if there's a hypnotherapist in their local area, then we can certainly refer them if we have one. And by the way, that's something that is an ongoing effort. I mean, to be able to find people that are familiar with the topic and that have had experience in the topic, and not just come into this totally cold, because of course it's so different than anything probably that they've ever handled before. So we're doing a vetting process as well, and it seems to be working fairly well. And then a couple of years ago, we set up an online support group, which, because in a lot of places there aren't support groups, like in most places there aren't support groups, or there aren't other assistance that we can give these people. So we set this online support group up, which you can, the abductee can, as long as they have a computer connection, can get into, and it's totally confidential. Nobody gets into it, unless they're screened, so to speak, and they can talk to other people. And right now we have over 80 people from not only the United States, but we have people from the UK and Sweden in the group as well, that are able to communicate 24/7 if something comes up and they're looking for that kind of help. So, as I said, MUFON all of a sudden started to get more interested in the abduction phenomena, and one of the directors came to me one day, and Ron Revere is his name, and he said, who better to talk to about the UFO phenomena except for people that have already been on board the craft, which I thought was a pretty interesting comment.
Right.
And so anyway, we took the next step, and they decided that MUFON decided that we should look at this abduction phenomena more seriously. And so they came to me and they said, let's do a study of some sort and really look at this phenomena. So I put a group of people together, which included Robert Lelurver, and the outcome was this first study called the Omega-3 study, and now I can get into that.
Well, actually, before you get into that, I do have some questions about some of the things. I've been taking notes, so I can, if I ever have to, write something up on you, I got all the details here. And if the government calls and asks more about you. No, but I wanted to ask about, like, when you were a child, this first UFO sighting that you had that really amazed you. What did the object look like?
Well, it was a what I would call at the time, or I can remember at the time, it was an oval object, a whitish oval object. It almost looked like you could, kind of translucent almost, and it was totally silent, and it was just moving along the treetops, and when I saw it, I was out. It was late October, and I was out feeding my dog, and so it was already dark, and so it really stood out for me, and I had never seen anything like that, and so it just freaked me out, and I ran in the house, and as I said, by the time I dragged my father out and convinced him to come see this thing, it was gone.
So did he ever believe you? Did he just say, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about"?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was not at all into any of this, and sort of a meat and potatoes kind of guy,
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it really piqued my interest, and
Wow, yeah.
afterwards, and so I went to the library and started. Back in those days, that's about the only way you could get
Right.
information. You had to go to a library.
Yeah, actually read books.
Yeah.
Can't browse the internet. So that's
Exactly.
interesting. And then, because our guest last week was similar, where it was a situation where he had a sighting, and that's what got him into it. And he was in the aerospace industry, and a lot of them, will have some sort of experience in the aerospace industry that'll get him interested. But he was the same. He was interested all along.
Yeah. Well, there's no question about it. A lot of times people have to be convinced in different ways, and certainly that is one way to all of a sudden open up the realm of possibility for someone that hasn't even thought about it or believed in it.
Right. And then when you became an investigator, I know at least for me, and I was wondering if it's similar to you, when I first became a MUFON investigator, I was skeptical of abductions until, like you, I ran across these abductees and found it was a real thing going on. Did you have any stage like that?
Well, definitely. You start talking to the person, and it starts off with, I went out on the balcony to have a smoke, and then I saw this object, and I didn't think anything of it, but then I kept looking at it, and then that was very strange. It's really, really weird. And then through a series of other events, I'll give you an example of a case one of the cases that I did. It started off like that, and I sat down with the woman, and I kept asking her questions. I said, "So, have you had any other experiences?" "Well, yeah, my boyfriend is a ranger, a park ranger, down at Sunset Beach. This is just down south of Santa Cruz here in Northern California." And so we were coming back from dinner, and it was just becoming dusk, and we passed this field, and we noticed this orange object sitting in the field. And she told me the time it was and everything, and then she says the next thing they remember was the fact that they were down at he lived in a trailer at the park, I guess. And they noticed that they had like 3 hours of missing time. The two of them.
Wow.
And basically that day it didn't stop there. Evidently that night the Greys, I guess, as she described them, came through the wall of the camper there, or the trailer, and they had a German Shepherd. German Shepherd was knocked out. He was taken right through the wall, okay? And she saw all this going on. They didn't take her, which was interesting. And so, you hear that kind of story being told, and you say, "Oh, well, wait a minute," But then I used a hypnotherapist that I knew, and we did a whole session with her and everything, and we put her under, and the reaction that she had during that session was so vivid. So, I mean, the emotions that came out during this session were, incredible. And so you start to say to yourself, well, wait a minute, to have this kind of emotion, there's got to be something there, whether there's some missing memory or something else going on, but to have that kind, and then you do this again with somebody else, and then you do it again with another person,
Right.
and they're telling you things that are very similar, yet different in each in its own little way, but it's just an incredible. You see these people crying and having almost pain going on. I had another woman that was with her girlfriend, and this happened to them, I guess, when they were in high school, and they saw this object come down. It came down so close that they could see into it. I guess there was this windows that the object had, and they could see the creatures looking back at them. And here's a typical thing where they had the experience, it scared the hell out of them, and then they never talked about it again.
Yeah.
And then years later, I guess two of them got together and said, "Do you remember that day?"
Mm-hmm.
And, so to me, I'm way beyond the fact, now, of course, that there's something going on.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how prevalent it is, like you're saying, and the manner in which these people approach you. It's not like they're flamboyant about it. Oh, yeah, I guess what happened to me. No, they're usually, in my experience, they're very hesitant to even share the experience.
Right.
Sometimes they share the experience and you never hear from them again, or they have to hide this experience from their spouse because that person doesn't believe them and doesn't like them talking about it. I mean, these are people who are reacting to this strangeness in a way that you would think they would, and so many people having so many similar experiences.
Yeah, and I get at least 2 to 3 calls a week that get funneled through MUFON headquarters, or people call. We have a website. OPUS has a website at www.opus-net.org, and we're getting more hits there as well. People ask me all the time, do you think that the experiences are happening more frequently? And I don't know how to answer that question in a sense, because people can communicate a lot better nowadays. They have more access to the internet and everything else. So maybe this level has not really increased, but now people are able to find people to talk to.
Right.
There's more organizations out there like Bud's, Intruder Foundation, or David Jacobs' ICAR, and Yvonne Smith with Zero down in Southern California, and Barbara Lamb. So there's more awareness going on now. But boy, I tell you, it just blows my mind. The phone calls that I got. I got one tonight from a guy in Houston. That's looking for some kind of help, and they don't know who to talk to. I mean, a lot of times they can't talk to their families because they don't want to hear it. It's scary for the family. I got a call a couple of weeks ago from a guy in North Carolina, and you talk about a place that definitely doesn't really want to know anything about this. His wife, his 2 small daughters, are all being abducted, supposedly, according to what he's saying. And he was crying on the phone because he says, "I don't know how to stop this. Can I help him?" And, when you hear a case like that, it really gets you upset. And, you want to reach out and try to help these people. And, we do the best we can. As a matter of fact, he says, yes, he'd like to be in, the online support group. And
Great. That's a great idea, an online support group, because, like you said, there's some people in some areas who there isn't anybody local to help them.
Right. And a lot. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say that really, I think, kind of what you're explaining, that to me is the biggest tragedy around the secrecy. Really, they're not telling us that there's craft flying around. The craft flying around typically don't interact with or don't seem to create problems with commercial airlines or whatever. That's fine. But when it comes down to the government knowing that there are some people being taken and traumatized, and not only not offering help for these people, but ridiculing these people and denying that anything is going on, and beyond that, if it's real, and I don't know, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, if they're possibly then abducting these people to try to find out what the non-terrestrial abductees did to them, which might be the case because you hear these stories and some of them sound pretty credible as well. I mean, that's really the tragedy to secrecy behind all this to me.
You're right on, Alejandro. I mean, one of the things that I'm sure you're familiar with Melinda Leslie and her Mill Labs experiences and military abductions. I kind of did a unscientific poll with the online support group, and almost 50% of the group said that they saw some type of a military uniform, humanoid, in a military uniform, like our military type personnel, involved with their abductions.
Wow.
That's an amazing fact.
Yeah, that's a large percentage. That shocks me. I wouldn't think it'd be that high.
Yeah, and again, very unscientific poll. Almost 40 people out of the 80 came back and said that. So to me, that just blew my mind. So
maybe this is a good segue to the scientific poll.
Very good, very good. Well, yeah, what we did is we took a number of instruments. When I say instruments, these are surveys, questionnaires, I should say, that Ring and Rosing back in 1990. Which compared individuals who reported near-death experiences with individuals who reported UFO encounters. And they also compared the experiential groups with two control groups. And then we also used another instrument from Makarek and Persinger in 1990. They developed an inventory to assess temporal lobe sensitivity and lability, which means rapid changeability or heightened reactivity in those who experience these anomalous type situations. So what we did is, this was like about a 22-page questionnaire that we sent out, and we sent this out to 71 people that felt they were abductees or experiencers, because the terminology, there are groups that feel it's very negative and call themselves abductees, and then there are other people that have had more positive experiences and call themselves experiencers. So trying not to upset anybody.
Yeah.
We use
inclusive.
both terms. And so, and then we had a control group, a community comparison control of about 51 people that don't believe they've had any type of experience at all. And so based on that, the major findings of the survey, well, both groups of participants showed a degree of fantasy proneness. There was no statistical significant difference between the two groups on that dimension. Thus, given the distribution of this dimension, the participants were normal or fantasy prone than the general population, which is something that, a lot of these debunkers like to throw at. Oh, they're just making this stuff up.
That's an important one, I think, because even these Harvard people, who were John Mack, his colleagues at Harvard, who are the big debunkers. I mean, they're Harvard professors. They should know better. They say, oh, these people are probably fantasy prone, without any study to back up. They're just assuming this, where you've done some work to find out that that isn't the case.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, when we started this thing, we envisioned four studies, and so this was the first of the four, and the second one is going to be kicked off here, as I said, probably after the first of the year. And then the other two I've got some raw outlines on that, but that's going to be something that I'm going to need to pull in some other psychologists to help me with that, because of course I don't have that kind of background. My background is business, but so I'm good at the logistical part of it and gathering these people and everything. But
Right.
the people like Robert Lelouver, he was an absolute gem. I mean, he couldn't have asked for a better man to head the study. He was just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, wonderful temperament. Get her done kind of attitude, just great guy. Yeah, he was one of my favorite people that I always looked forward to seeing at different conferences. Hoping
He always had such great stories to tell.
Yeah.
He was just very intelligent, and so I just can't talk enough about the guy.
Yeah.
When I heard that he had died, I just blew me away.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
If the omega-3 is the first study, why did you name it the 3 actually?
Well, I think that, and this was Robert's. The first omega, of course, was the one that Ring and Rosing did, of course, and then the omega-2. I think he probably might have in a previous study that he did with some other people. Might have coined that phrase for that group. So I think he just wanted to keep it consistent, I guess, in his own way of looking at this thing.
And I'll apologize officially too on the air that when we covered this story in our magazine, that there was a misunderstanding and that the credit for your involvement on the omega-3 was left out.
And I did see it in the your recent issue that in the editorial page that you made that correction. So thanks for that.
Yeah, I apologize for that. And there was another gentleman also that we left out.
Yeah, it was Michael Freeman.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he's the psychologist out in Georgia. So I think we're going to lean on him a little bit more heavily this time around, and hopefully be able to bring this next study to fruition properly. I've already got a statistician that I'm going to be working with. Actually, he's a MUFON member too, so that works out pretty well.
Now, you mentioned earlier about MUFON kind of having this bad rap, because I had to deal with this a lot doing the MUFON PR. People would always give me a lot of trouble about MUFON not paying attention to abductions. But then on the opposite side, it was funny because one time the LA Times called us. Is one of our best pieces for MUFON, and she said, well, when I called you all, it was kind of funny because I had to choose 1 for a UFO sighting, 2 for an alien abduction, and 3 to get to other people. And she's like, there's probably no other phone dialer system that has that sort of thing.
That's true. It's funny how you have to have somebody from outside the group tell you something like that. Say, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, and which was kind of a funny thing that she pointed that out, but it did demonstrate that MUFON gets kind of caught in the middle between all these different groups that have these different perspectives on how to properly look into this. But MUFON is doing what they can to look into it, and you're part of this organization or this group now that is doing what they can to do some research here. Right,
and for me, it's of course something that just absolutely is falling right into my bailiwick, so to speak. And matter of fact, just recently they made me abduction specialist for MUFON, and which I'm honored to have that position. And Robert was part of my group because I basically put together a abduction reaction team to help anybody that might need it within the MUFON organization. So now I need to unfortunately replace Robert, but and then I have a hypnotherapist, Craig Lang, who's who's helping us a lot and doing some of the vetting on the hypnotherapists that we're bringing in, because obviously MUFON wants to have people with credentials and insurance and everything else, because unfortunately you have to worry about things like that these days.
Yeah. Yep. Unfortunately, and there's a very impressive group of people on this research group.
Yeah, we've got some people on there. I need to drag out the names of the guys, because there's 12 people that are actually part of the group, and they one of the people, Stuart Appel, has actually written the code of ethics for MUFON. It's in the training manual, the field investigators manual for MUFON, along with a couple of other gentlemen. And he's a dean at SUNY, at the New York State School in Brockport.
Oh, wow.
And he's actually participated in a number of conferences just recently. In I think Boston, there was a psychology symposium, and he spoke about the UFO phenomena. And this is some really, to have academia really getting involved in this kind of thing is dynamite.
Yeah, it's exciting because it is starting to happen, and I know it's always been a big goal of MUFON, and I think that's one thing people have to understand, because I think personally, and I am of that belief, that that's the important next step, that really you got to kind of take things as they come. You got to take your baby steps, and I think we have to get the academia more interested, involved, and that's a step that we have to take before really getting the government involved in all of this.
Exactly. Yeah, another person in the group is Rick Strassman, Dr. Rick Strassman, who wrote the book The Spirit Molecule, which talks about DMT and its relationship to altered states of reality and everything. And this is a naturally occurring substance in the human body. And I've always had sort of a pet theory that the abductees may have a higher level of DMT in their systems that allow them to interact with these aliens, or the aliens are more interested in these people because perhaps they can interact more easily because they have that higher level of DMT in their systems. But that's a whole other study.
Yeah. Well, and that does get me to another question, because a lot of those people who speak about the DMT or talk about the DMT levels in the brain related to abduction or other paranormal phenomena all kind of believe that these phenomena are non-physical in nature, kind of like Dr. John Mack, who we mentioned earlier, really felt a lot of this was non-physical.
Right.
How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's like things that we, one day you can do something physical, the next day you're daydreaming. I think it's that kind of thing. It's both. I think it's absolutely both. I think that it's not just one thing for one person. It could be multiple things, and there are definitely times when the person comes back in and there's mud on the floor because they went outside and their clothes are on backwards, or they're missing altogether, or something.
Right.
And so there's physicality involved with it, and marks on their bodies, things of that nature, bruising. It's just a whole plethora of different types of parameters that really lead you to believe that this is more than just a fantasy in their minds, or a daydream, or something of that nature. So I kind of believe it can be all the above, where
right.
That's going on.
Yeah, I think that really, if people could focus resources, I think people are uncomfortable with abductions, understandably. But that it's an area where we really have a chance to get some good physical evidence, because there are people that these things happen to often, and there are, like you mentioned, some physiological effects or otherwise actual physical evidence that can be collected. And in some cases, that physical evidence has been collected and documented and displayed. And those I think, are very significant cases. And I'm excited that I think, that may be one area, as uncomfortable as it is, that we may be able to obtain some indisputable physical evidence.
Exactly. It's so difficult scenario when you think about it. I've often thought about, well, I would love to camp out at somebody's house that is having ongoing experiences and be able to actually try to be there when something happens. But it's so difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be in the right place at the right time. And how often would that be a viable way to go? People have tried to record things, and of course, nothing comes out. It's all fuzz or something.
Right. And these things happen. These abductions happen in the middle of large neighborhoods where somehow they're able to do these things undetected in the middle of these big neighborhoods.
I guess the case that I always tell people about, Bud, I think Hopkins was the gentleman that mentioned it one time, where they had corroborating evidence where some woman calls in to the police department and says, I see this object hovering over this person's house, and then the person actually ends up going to Bud, who claims that they were abducted on this certain night, and somehow he was able to put the two cases together, where the woman that reported and the woman that felt she was abducted, and here's this corroborating evidence that there was an object over the house.
Right.
That's pretty strange. I'm working on a case right now, which I almost hate to talk about it in one respect, but it's a phenomenal case that supposedly this man, who's now in his 50s, early 50s, happened to he and his mother when he was 11 years old. Again, 11 years old. Seems like that number always comes up a lot for whatever reason. They saw this object hovering over a house in their neighborhood, and this beam of light came down out of the object, and looks like these two grays came down in the beam, went into the house across the street. A little while later, the husband is going up in the beam with one of the grays. A little while later, the mother with two kids goes out up in the beam with the other gray, and supposedly the family disappeared and never returned.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm trying to. The person mentioned a number of facts, which I'm trying to get corroboration on right now before I go crazy with this case and reveal anything. But I mean, this is kind of stuff I hear, a lot, and it just blows you away. It's like, my God.
Yeah, it's kind of like, do you want to find out it's true or not? I mean, you want to do the research, but it's kind of hopeful that it doesn't. Yeah.
Yeah, in that particular case, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
But anyway, getting back to the study, some of the other things that we found was a sensitivity to altered realities and altered states of consciousness. And we also found early paranormal or psi experiences. So this mostly happened, like right away. I mean, it mostly started at a very young age. There was also higher rates of stress, conflict, tension, and or psychosocial trauma in childhood, which is interesting. And then what happened was that there was a greater tendency towards disassociation as a coping style. Not clinically dissociating, where you would have to put them in a loony bin or anything like that, but it was just a way that they were able to handle the situation. Seemed to be prevalent. Then there was psychophysical changes in the body, states, and brain functioning, which, like, there was kundalini energies, attitudes, beliefs, and values shifted towards universal spiritual beliefs as opposed to traditional religious beliefs and faith traditions. And then there was greater ecological concerns and concerns for planetary welfare. And then there was a sense of a purposive intelligence involved in participants' experiences in earthly affairs. This intelligence is often seen as extraterrestrial in nature. And perhaps most importantly, the experience with and interest in contact with alien other produces a change in the participant's worldview. And that part that I just talked about was part of the ring and rosing part of the study, and then the personal philosophy inventory. Now, this was for me one of the most interesting things. The abductees' experiences report greater temporal lobe and limbic system sensitivity than do community comparison controls. This may open pathways to altered states of reality. So basically, there was a difference in their temporal lobe activity, and was that something that was a factor due to early childhood psi experiences or trauma of some sort? This is something that we actually wanted to look at a little bit more closely. But that was a significant difference between the control group and the abductees. So,
interesting. I remember Dr. Sprinkle in his book, because he did a lot of psychological inventories, not, I don't think, on the fantasy-prone part, but other attitudes towards life. And he found a significant change. The biggest factor that changed was this shift to, after their experiences, largely believing in reincarnation, whereas they weren't prone to that prior. They were, like the typical population, mostly Roman Catholic or Christians.
Right. Yeah, it definitely it's an amazing change that happens, and I always tell people that it's a spiritual journey that these people get on. It's not a religious. When I say spiritual, it's not religious. I'm not talking organized religion, but it opens them up to a whole different perspective on life, and how they react with one another, with the world, with nature, etc. And which tends to be a very good thing. Unfortunately, for most people, they have to go through these three stages, where in the initial stage is pure terror. Then they come to accept it. The experience. And then when it stops happening, it's sort of like the Stockholm Syndrome. What happened? Why aren't you coming anymore?
Right. That I've found shocking as well. People who feel, even if they feel terrified. One gentleman, he covered his windows with black cardboard and boards, and because of his experiences. And he hadn't had any in a while, and he had one recently, and that's why I was talking to him. But he as well, he was the person I found most terrified, who went to the most extremes to try to keep this from happening, but he felt the same. He kind of missed them.
Yeah, isn't that something?
He said, it's terrible, but I know they're just doing their job.
Yeah. And, and one of the things that when people call me and ask me, how can I stop this kind of thing? And right away I asked them, I said, so how do you feel about the situation? And invariably, there's a sense of curiosity that exists. And so there's an ambivalence there. And because of that ambivalence, it leaves the door open. And, if you really want it to stop, you have to be strong-willed and say, that's it, I'm not interested, I want it to stop. But then again, that may work or it may not. But I know for sure that if you have that ambivalence, it's going to continue. One of the things that I recommend, too, is to people that call me, and I'm sure you're familiar with Ann Druffel, and she wrote a book a number of years ago called How to Defend Yourself Against Alien Abduction, which has about 9 different methods that people that have been abducted wrote to her, because she did a lot of research in this area as well, and told her that, well, this worked for me, and so, and this is something that, if you can tell somebody, here, pick up this book, read it, and try this, and it's not going to work the first time probably, you have to keep at it for a while. At least it gives them something to hold on to, a little, bit of reality, something solid.
Yeah. There's a question, someone asked a couple of questions from the chat. And I think this first question, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, is around, do you think that science is more willing to look into consciousness?
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely. I think that whole realm, we just, I think we're just scratching the surface on that. What is this reality that we're in? Just look at the movie The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we just, when we talk about the abduction phenomena, I don't think we have the right language for it, and we certainly don't have the tools to really understand it, because is it extraterrestrial in nature? If it is extraterrestrial in nature, then I think we do have the tools and the language to talk about it. But if it's interdimensional or time travelers even, which, by the way, Linda Howe gave a presentation on Rendlesham Forest, and she talks about the fact that the guys that were abducted there came back and said that these guys were time travelers. So, that's some amazing information. So, my own personal feeling about all this is that it's all the above. It's extraterrestrial, dimensional, and it's time travelers.
It's my favorite answer. And it's funny that you went into what the second question was, which was, can this help us deal with alien technology, which uses the control of time, space, and our awareness.
Right. Yeah. You hear the physicists, the general population talk about, well, it's not possible to travel light years away, and in our lifetime we can't possibly do it. But it's like we're thinking in such a small way. I think that why can't we do that? I think we can. I think we can do anything we can possibly imagine in our minds. Whatever we can imagine, we can probably do eventually.
And more.
And more.
The quantum physicists, especially the very theoretical, like Michio Kaku is a great example, or Dr. Claude Swanson, some of you may be familiar with, or a number of others. There's a group called the Society for Scientific Exploration.
Oh, yeah.
There's a consciousness group that likes to work with the Dalai Lama actually now. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of scientific organizations really taking a look at consciousness and all of these possibilities, because they're seeing these things demonstrated in quantum physics and quantum mechanics, these things that pop in and out of reality and possibly moving through dimensions and space-time.
Well, I love the example in string theory where okay, I want you to hold this end of the string, and I'm going to go all the way to the other end of the universe, but the string is between us. Now I'm going to pull it, and you're going to feel it instantaneously.
Right.
I mean, it's bending space, bending the space-time continuum, etc. It's just, why not? Why not?
Yeah. I mean, that part is really amazing. I know the SSE. Oh, I know one question now that we're starting to run out of time I wanted to ask about. One thing, have you also found in your own research that it's a generational phenomena, abduction, that typically a parent and or a child is experiencing the same thing?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I mentioned, this guy in North Carolina, I mean, his family, his whole family, his kids, he himself. I didn't ask him the question about whether or not his mother or father or any other people in the family, because he was so upset. I just wanted to calm him down. But
Right.
Yes, definitely. That is happening most of the time.
Yeah.
Most of the
Well, it makes me wonder, and maybe it does you too, that especially with these people who having this in your study where they have these experiences, psi experiences, or other paranormal phenomena in their youth, that perhaps they come from a family that's being manipulated, adjusted somehow throughout the generations.
Oh yeah. You know, I always get the question of why me. You know,
Yeah.
why me? And then I'll ask them, well, do you know of anybody else in your family that has ever said anything to you about this or given you an indication? And a lot of times they do come back and say, well, you know, my mother did say something, you know, a while ago about some experience that she might have had, and I didn't believe it, you know, type of a thing. And it is definitely generational, and you know, the psi experiences. You know, I had a mother call me and saying, you know, I've had these experiences in my life, and now my daughter, who's 4 years old, is starting to tell me, you know, certain things that sounds just like what I remember when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and in some cases, you know, they're not too upset because they've gone through it already and they know they're okay. They came through it, but nevertheless, they're still concerned because it is their child.
Right.
And that seems to be the case that is the most difficult to handle when you have a parent, you know, trying to protect their child and they can't.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We are about of time. Unfortunately, it's flown by. And of course, Opus you can find at opus-net.org, right?
Right.
And then MUFON.com
Right.
is the MUFON group. Any other plugs or emails or websites you wanted to mention?
No, I think you got it all, Alejandro, and I want to thank you very much for having me on tonight. And you know, the one thing I guess I would like, if any listeners out there know of any therapists, hypnotherapists, or medical people or mental health people that are willing to work with abductees, I would certainly like to hear about it. And my email is on the Opus website, so you can email me from there. And I would love to hear from people.
Well, great. I know you're going to have a table at the UFO Congress,
Right.
so people will be able to come and meet you there and to talk to you about your group there also.
Very good. Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It was a lot of fun, very informative, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. You're going to be in this for a long time, just like the rest of us, huh?
Absolutely, Alejandro, and thank you so much again.
Yep, thank you. It's
All right.
our pleasure.
Oh, mine too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, that was Lester Velez. A lot of fun, a lot of interesting stuff when it comes to abductions. And, of course, like I said, opus-net.org or MUFON.com for some of the MUFON stuff. You know, subscribing to the MUFON Journal, you're going to be able to get a lot of this information. And then we're fortunate enough also to get it to you in our magazine, so subscribe to Open Minds. Next week, we have one of our exciting guests at the UFO Congress, and that is Jim Marrs. He's been sort of a conspiracy author for some time. In fact, the JFK movie, the famous one, was based on his book. But more than that, he's gotten into all kinds of power structures, UFOs, ET, stuff like that. So we're going to have him next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. Don't forget to tune in. You've been listening to Open Minds Radio, your UFO news authority. Talk to you next week.